Up next on Way of the Renaissance Man, 5 Minutes with Dave Rubin.
Welcome to the Way of the Renaissance Man podcast. This is a show about ideas, personal empowerment, and celebrating the rational life. Our goal is to help each other discover the tools needed to better focus our minds, integrate our thoughts with actions, and live the lives we really want. I'm your host, Jim Woods.
During the recent FreedomFest conference in Rapid City, South Dakota, talk show host, author, and ideas activist Dave Rubin of The Rubin Report came by for a quick visit with the Renaissance Man. And now, here's Jim's introduction and thoughts on the episode, followed by 5 Minutes with Dave Rubin.
Today I'm speaking with Dave Rubin, host of The Rubin Report, which is often described as the largest talk show about free speech and big ideas. Now, you know, on this show, we're all about free speech and about big ideas, and specifically how we can understand those ideas and integrate them into our lives to make our lives better. So I'm a fan of Dave Rubin's. He's gone through a few different iterations in his life that are quite interesting. He's actually began his career in comedy and also as kind of a left-leaning progressive. And he kind of, over the years, has become a free-thinking, what he describes as a classical liberal, which I think is actually a good description for him. Dave's an interesting guy. He is very articulate, well-educated, well-read, a very funny guy. And his background, he's a gay guy. He's been married and he lives in the, so he's got a strange kind of background in the sense that he spent the majority of his life kind of subscribing to like the political beliefs that are more common within the gay community and based on just characteristics that he considers to be immutable. So he kind of got fed up with the mainstream media and the whole narrative about clickbaits and the whole kind of discussion on what's considered the left. And so he just decided to, figure out what was true for him. So I respect someone that does that quite a bit, and because it's not easy in today's kind of milieu with this cancel culture and just people criticizing you for every opinion you have, left, right, center, it doesn't matter, you're going to get criticized. So, and one thing I like about him in Dave's bio, he says that he came to realize that no person or idea should be expected to join a side, but rather they should embrace their status as an individual. Now, as someone who's a champion of individual rights and the expression of an individual, I really like this about Dave. And I mean, I would have to say that I disagree with him on several political type ideas, but those are more just practical politics type things. And they're not bedrock ideas because I don't really know exactly what he says about every issue that matters to me, but that doesn't matter because Dave's a champion of free thinking. He's a champion of classical liberalism. I met him, and this interview was conducted at the FreedomFest conference, which he was one of the keynote speakers. So you know that just by that he's a person that has something to say. He once said that he thinks that the modern left has lost its way by taking political correctness and groupthink to a dangerous level. And that is exactly how I feel as well. He's also says that by doing that, they're basically distracting from the kind of American ideal of the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Now, pursuit here is the critical element because to pursue your values should be the American right. But due to groupthink and tribalism and political correctness and cancel culture, those things are becoming more and more difficult, especially if you're open about your ideas and you want your ideas to flourish. So we didn't get a chance in this interview to dig deep into all of these things. We mainly talked about we touched on the classical liberalism that he espouses now, but his big issue right now is the issue of big tech and its role in the free speech issues of the day, deplatforming, cancel culture, things like that. These are very important issues, and Dave Rubin is on the kind of the forefront. He's been taken off of Twitter. He's been canceled, but he's trying to do something to combat that. But he's not doing it through some kind of draconian lobbying for legislation of some sort, although he kind of has an openness to that idea, which I particularly do not like. But that's beside the point. He's discussing it, and he would prefer the solution to be competition based. And that is definitely how I see this issue. I see no role for, draconian governmental intervention in free speech issues. And I don't think governments have right to intervene in what Google or YouTube or anything wants to do with their own platforms. It's their platform, and you're free to either use it or not use it. So there's a lot of issues involved in these things. I think Dave Rubin is an important voice in bringing these things out in the open and discussing these things. So without further ado, I bring you my 5 minutes with Dave Rubin.
Okay, I'm at FreedomFest 2021, and I got 5 minutes with the great Dave Rubin.
What's up? We're basically sitting on each other's lap right now.
No, exactly. We might as well hug. So, you're here?
Yes.
Talk to me about what you're talking about today.
I mean, I'm talking about a little bit of everything. Look, we're in an extremely weird...
You're with the way of the Renaissance, man. We talk about everything here anyway.
These days, if you don't talk about everything, people don't think you know anything, right? Everyone has to be an expert in everything, when really there's very few experts, and I don't pretend actually to be an expert in most of the things that I talk about, but I do think I can communicate a lot of the big stuff that's happening in a way that's accessible.
You do that very well
to regular people. I mean, that I think is what my role in this thing is. They asked me, my keynote that I gave this morning was supposed to be mostly about why I consider myself a classical liberal and sort of how that fits in within the libertarian movement and how that fits in within conservatism. But really I ended up talking mostly about big tech, because to me that's the issue of our time. If any of us are to survive 2021 and beyond, to make sure that we can communicate with each other, because we rarely do this anymore. We sit with somebody and talk to them, but we're doing it all on these phones. We don't know who owns the data. We don't know how we're being manipulated. We don't know why we're seeing videos or not seeing videos. We don't know when we tweet something, if it's going to be seen, et cetera, et cetera. That's more interesting to me, on top of, now we have all these issues with, Parler server being blown up and everything else. So the tech stuff is to me the frontier of the rest of what FreedomFest is all about.
Right. So what do you think is a good way to approach a solution to this thing? Is it like a democratic kind of solution where we just revolt with our dollars?
Yeah.
Or what's the approach?
Well, that's the answer that I would always prefer, right? So I would always prefer capitalism. I would always prefer competition, and I would always prefer that human ingenuity will solve these problems. Right. And that is actually what I mainly believe. That being said, I think you do need to fight a war on multiple fronts. So it's not like you can just go in with ground troops. You might have to think about an Air Force too, and you might have to think about some tanks. And what I mean by that is, although I don't like government intervention, obviously I don't want government bureaucrats walking into Google and saying, let me see the algorithm.
Yeah, that would be almost worse than the cause. No, that's a solution that's worse than any kind of problem.
Anyone that's been on a government website knows that no government regulator is going to walk into Google and be like, oh, I do see the way you're manipulating the algorithm.
Let me rewrite your algorithms. No.
Yeah, long gone. So I don't want that. I wouldn't be opposed necessarily to some antitrust stuff, that you'd at least break up the companies so they become a little less monolithic. I don't love it. It doesn't work with.
Yeah, it threatens my libertarian sensibilities. But then again, so does the whole big tech world too.
And what I would also say is that libertarians generally don't like big government, but now we have something that exists over the government, which is big tech. So I do think that there's some argument that when you're in a war of this nature, you have to do some things you don't like. But I actually do get the pure libertarian argument. Right. But I would always prefer competition. That's why I started locals.com. I think we're answering a lot of these technological questions by building more of a bottom-up social media operation than top down, where, you know, on Twitter boots you, you're gone. With Locals, you create a Locals account. If I go into your Locals community and I'm doing something you don't like, you can kick me out, but I'm still on Locals as a platform.
Right.
So
You're not deplatformed.
You're not deplatformed. You're just saying to me you can't come in my house, which, by the way, it's the most libertarian way of looking at things.
Exactly.
I'm not kicking you out of the community. I'm not booting you out of the country.
Yeah, you just don't want to. You don't want to be a part of it.
No, and by the way, we do subscription, and when you do subscription, the minimum is $2 a month. But when you do subscription, you eliminate 99.9% of the bad behavior, because
Exactly.
you give people something for free, they're going to behave a certain way.
Yeah, the Twitter sphere is just like replete with nothing but, like, you know, free trolls that are just that's all they got to do all day is troll other people trying to do real stuff.
Yeah, and then the real people start debating them, and then it's like, all right,
it's a
we're in a voluntary mental institution, basically. Yeah.
Well, we're trying to make it sane, you know. So if someone wants to get on the Locals thing that you have, how would they do that? How would they go about it?
Yeah, so you can create your own community at locals.com if you want to join my community, so you can see. And by the way, you can join for free, look around for free, and then if you want to interact with some of the content, you have to pay. So it's just rubinreport.locals.com, and we got a sleek video player, audio player, live video streaming, live chat. We built it all ourselves. We're working on a lot of the underbelly technological stuff related to storage and everything else. And
cool.
Very proud of what we've built.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm looking forward to checking that out as well, because I think the only solution to bad ideas and bad control is good ideas and good control.
That's it.
You know, otherwise it's violence, and nobody wants that.
Not yet.
No, not yet. No violence yet, says Dave Rubin.
Yet.
Okay, thanks so much for the 5 minutes.
Way of the Renaissance Man podcast and lifestyle website are copyrighted 2021 by Jim Woods. All rights reserved. For more great interviews and Renaissance Man resources, visit wayoftherenaissanceman.com.